Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Last night we started by telling you that Russian President Vladimir Putin has landed in India. Tonight we can tell you that he's wrapping up his visit. By the time the show ends, he would most probably have taken off. Today was a packed day. We'll bring you a ball-by-ball account and the 5 big takeaways from the summit. Also, what this visit means for the stakeholders, not just India and Russia, but also the rivals and the frenemies. How would China and the US view this? We'll also address the question that the internet cannot stop asking. Why did they ride together in a Toyota Fortuner of all cars? A special report on Putin's many visits to India and how he has shaped global politics for over 25 years now. Also on the show, the aviation mess, more than 1,000 flights cancelled across India, and Indigo now faces an investigation. The RBI cuts the repo rate. What does it mean for your loans and EMIs? Why India's foreign minister says the West will be the net losers of their own immigration crackdowns. And the US conducts another military strike in the Caribbean. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Taiwan says China is deploying warships for military operations stretching from the Yellow Sea to the South China Sea. Taipei calls it a threat to the region and urges Beijing to exercise restraint. China has neither confirmed nor denied the maneuvers. Beijing claims self-ruled Taiwan as part of its territory. The European Union hits Elon Musk's X with a $140 million fine. The decision risks a fresh clash with Donald Trump's administration. The probe into X was seen as a test of the EU's resolve to police big tech. Earlier, the US Vice President had warned the bloc against targeting American firms through quote-unquote censorship. Heavy rains trigger fresh landslide warnings in Sri Lanka. This comes as the death toll from last week's cyclone crosses 600. More than 200 people are still missing. Record rainfall had triggered floods and deadly landslides. The president has called it the most challenging natural disaster in the island's history. The Tanzanian government has stepped up its crackdown on opponents. Once the United Nations, more than 1,000 people were killed in the protests over the contested October election. The opposition says the polls were a sham as most of the candidates were either jailed or disqualified. And Netflix will buy Warner Brothers Discovery. The streaming giant will acquire the film and television studio known for shows like Game of Thrones and Harry Potter movies. The deal is valued at nearly $83 billion. It is the entertainment industry's biggest consolidation deal this decade.
My friend Rashtrapati Putin, Namaskar, Dobry din.
It's day 2 of Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to India. It has high stakes, high symbolism, and even higher expectations. The Russian president landed in New Delhi last evening. From there, it was off to a private dinner, a dinner with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two leaders met away from cameras, away from formalities, and away from the buzz of protocol. Prime Minister Modi also gifted President Putin a Russian translation of the Bhagavad Gita. But yesterday was just the trailer. Today was the main event. The summit, the talks, the announcement, all of it was packed in one day. It started with a ceremonial welcome. President Vladimir Putin arrived at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in his Aurus Senat. This is Putin's luxury limousine. He takes it everywhere he goes. He was welcomed by President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. From there, it was a short trip to the Rajghat. That's the memorial dedicated to Mahatma Gandhi. President Putin laid a wreath there. He observed a moment of silence and even penned down a special note in the visitor's book. You can see the message on your screen. It's in Russian, but here's what it says. Putin described Mahatma Gandhi as one of the key founders of modern India. He said Gandhi's ideas still remain relevant today, and they continue to inspire the world. After this, it was down to business, the 23rd Annual India-Russia Summit. President Putin arrived at the Hyderabad House. That was the venue for the bilateral summit. The two leaders met. So did the two delegations. Multiple MOUs were signed. An MOU is a Memorandum of Understanding. It's basically an agreement. Many of these were signed today.
विश्व का कल्याण शांति के मार्ग पर ही है। हम सबको मिलकर के शांति के रास्ते तलाशने चाहिए। और पिछले दिनों जो प्रयास चल रहे हैं, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि विश्व फिर से एक बार शांति की दिशा में लौटेगा।
We had the opportunity, and you gave me that opportunity, to speak in detail about what is happening on the Ukrainian track and about the steps we are taking jointly with some other partners, including the United States, toward a possible peaceful settlement of this crisis.
So the two leaders discussed Ukraine. They also talked about oil, trade, defense, economic cooperation and tourism. Then it was time for the joint statement. We'll bring you the key takeaways from that in just a bit. But first, here's something that caught everyone's attention. Prime Minister Modi welcomed President Putin in Russian.
Your Excellency, my friend, राष्ट्रपति पुतिन, दोनों देशों के डेलीगेट्स, मीडिया के साथियों, नमस्कार, добрый день.
With the bilateral statements done, they headed to the India-Russia Business Forum. It was held at the Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. The focus was on trade, technology and connectivity. The two leaders talked about entering a new era of innovation. They spoke about artificial intelligence, co-production and co-creation, and how India's young workforce could help Russia.
हम उस लक्ष्य को समय से पहला पूरा करने के संकल्प के साथ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और मेरा विश्वास बढ़ रहा है। INSTC या तो फिर नॉर्दर्न सी रूट यानी चेन्नई व्लादिवोस्टोक कॉरिडोर, इन पर हम आगे बढ़ने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं। जल्द ही इस दिशा में प्रगति होगी। इससे ट्रांजिट टाइम घटेगा, कॉस्ट कम होगी और बिजनेस के लिए नए मार्केट्स खुलेंगे।
We are ready for broad cooperation with India in the area of artificial intelligence, where both our countries have their own advanced developments. Russia is interested to take part in the Artificial Intelligence Summit in India scheduled for February 2026, as I have just told Mr. Prime Minister.
The two leaders also exchanged gifts. Prime Minister Modi gave President Putin fine Assam black tea, an ornate silver tea set, a silver horse, a marble chess set, Kashmiri saffron, and of course, like I told you, the Bhagavad Gita in Russian. From there, Putin's next order of business was more personal. It was the launch of RT India. It's a new channel from Russia today. But the day was not over yet for him. The last engagement was a state dinner at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. It was a grand affair. There was a joint military band performing. The menu blended elements from both India and Russia, including Kashmiri Wazwan and Russian borscht. Will Putin eat any of it? Chances are he won't. The Russian president rarely eats food prepared by local chefs. He travels with a team of his own chefs, aides and security personnel. The ingredients for his food are pre-approved. They're cooked under strict protocol, and a mobile food testing laboratory accompanies him. So he's unlikely to taste the feast, but that's hardly the point of these dinners. And with that, it was the end of day 2 and the visit.
भारत रूस मित्रता एक ध्रुव तारे की तरफ बनी रही।
So you've seen all the color. Now let's talk about the substance. The joint statements, the agreements, the key takeaways. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin held wide-ranging discussions. They reviewed every aspect of the India-Russia relationship. And one issue dominated the talks: trade. Considering the current geopolitical climate, that's hardly surprising. Trump's tariffs have caused considerable upheaval. But for India and Russia, the tariffs have also opened up opportunities, and both sides want to capitalize on that. Today, they announced a new economic roadmap. That was the first big takeaway: the India-Russia Economic Cooperation Program. Its agenda is quite ambitious. India and Russia want to achieve $100 billion in annual trade. That is the new goal, $100 billion.
आर्थिक सहयोग को नई ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाना हमारी साझी प्राथमिकता है। इसे साकार करने के लिए आज हमने 2030 तक के लिए एक इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन प्रोग्राम पर सहमति बनाई है। इससे हमारा व्यापार और निवेश डाइवर्सिफाइड, बैलेंस और सस्टेनेबल बनेगा और सहयोग के क्षेत्रों में नए आयाम भी जुड़ेंगे।
What's the value of bilateral trade today? Around $65 billion. They want to expand it to $100 billion. Both sides believe that it is within reach, the $100 billion mark. Russia is counting on energy exports. Putin wants to keep supplying oil to India. Today he said the shipments will remain, quote-unquote, uninterrupted.
Russia is a reliable supplier of oil, gas, coal, and everything that is required for the development of India's energy. We are ready to continue uninterrupted shipments of fuel for the fast-growing Indian economy.
It's a strong message of intent. Putin highlighted some projects which are already in the pipeline, like the Kudankulam project in Tamil Nadu. Now, this is a southern Indian state, Tamil Nadu. It's where India is building its largest nuclear power plant in Kudankulam, and Russia is playing a pivotal role in it. Russia is providing the reactor technology. It is sharing construction expertise. The Kudankulam plant will have 6 nuclear reactors. Putin said that 2 of them are already operational, another 4 are being built, and he said that Russia remains committed to the project. He also said that they are open to sharing more advanced nuclear technologies with India, like modular reactors and floating nuclear power plants. Putin said that both sides discussed these possibilities, so energy will remain a key pillar of the India-Russia partnership. Having said that, India wants a more balanced trade relationship, and that is the second big takeaway. India wants to export more to Russia, and Russia is willing to buy more. They signed some agreements today. The Russians will buy more of marine and agricultural products from India. And this is interesting, this choice of products, because these are the exports that have been hit by Trump's tariffs. He slapped 50% import duties in August, so Indian exports have suffered, and now Russia is offering an alternative market for Indian goods. But can it fully make up for the hit from the US market? That's unlikely. America is still one of India's biggest export destinations. Russia is a large economy, but it cannot match that level of demand. So this won't be a replacement, but it can help offset some of the losses. It can bring more balance to India's trade with Russia. Then we come to headline number 3, and that is defense. There were no big announcements on this front. Both sides reaffirmed their partnership. They signaled a shift in direction. And I'll tell you how. Traditionally, India has been a major buyer of Russian weapons. But now they want to build together. And the joint statement spells it out. It lists new areas of cooperation like defense, spare parts, and key components, including parts of existing Russian systems. Both sides back the idea of technology transfers and the setting up of new joint ventures.
Russia and India traditionally cooperate closely in military and technical areas. Our country has helped in the modernization and in equipping the Indian Army for more than half a century, including its air defense forces, aviation, and its navy. Generally, we are certainly satisfied with the results of the talks.
So the defense partnership is moving from trade to production. Headline number 4, the people-to-people ties. India and Russia have signed a mobility agreement. It will allow Indian professionals to work in Russia in both white-collar and blue-collar sectors like construction, engineering, textiles, manufacturing and electronics. And with this mobility pact, around 70,000 Indians could get a job in Russia. But that's not all. India too is opening up. It is inviting Russian tourists to visit India. New Delhi will soon offer a 30-day free e-tourist visa to Russians. Prime Minister Modi made the announcement himself.
मुझे खुशी है कि शीघ्र ही हम रूसी नागरिकों के लिए निःशुल्क 30 डे ई-टूरिस्ट वीजा और 30 डे ग्रुप टूरिस्ट वीजा की शुरुआत करने जा रहे हैं। मैन पावर मोबिलिटी हमारे लोगों को जोड़ने के साथ साथ दोनों देशों के लिए नई ताकत और नए अवसर क्रिएट करेगी। मुझे खुशी है कि इससे बढ़ावा देने के लिए आज 2 समझौते किए गए हैं।
India is also expanding its diplomatic presence in Russia. 2 new consulates have opened up recently. The idea is to increase local outreach, to strengthen people-to-people ties. And then we come to headline number 5, terrorism. India and Russia have taken a united stand against terrorism.
आतंकवाद के विरुद्ध लड़ाई में भारत और रूस ने लंबे समय से कंधा मिलाकर सहयोग किया है। पहलगाम में हुआ आतंकी हमला हो या क्रोकस सिटी हॉल पर किया गया कायरतापूर्ण आघात, इन सभी घटनाओं की जड़ एक ही है। भारत का अटल विश्वास है कि आतंकवाद मानवता के मूल्यों पर सीधा प्रहार है और इसके विरुद्ध वैश्विक एकता ही हमारी सबसे बड़ी ताकत है।
The joint statement condemned 2 recent attacks, one in India in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam and the other in Russia at Moscow's Crocus City Hall. Both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to counter terrorism in all its forms, including cross-border terror, terror financing networks and terror safe havens. In fact, this has been a cornerstone of the India-Russia partnership. So those are the 5 big takeaways. Now let's also tell you what they left out. The war in Ukraine. It finds no mention in the joint statement, although Prime Minister Modi did speak about it, and here's what he said.
यूक्रेन के संबंध में भारत ने शुरुआत से शांति का पक्ष रखा है। हम इस विषय के शांतिपूर्ण और स्थायी समाधान के लिए किए जा रहे सभी प्रयासों का स्वागत करते हैं। भारत सदैव अपना योगदान देने के लिए तैयार रहा है और आगे भी रहेगा।
So this summit was about highlighting shared interests and reiterating that this relationship is here to stay. Western sanctions and pressure cannot force them to part ways. India and Russia are doubling down.
ट्वेंटी 30 तक के लिए इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन प्रोग्राम पर सहमति बनाई।
So the talks are done, the dinner is done, and now it's time to take stock. What does this summit mean for the stakeholders? And I don't just mean India and Russia, I mean the rivals too, like the United States of America and China. I'm sure Donald Trump and Xi Jinping were watching things closely. What would they have made of this summit? Let's break it down for you. We'll start with India. For India, this summit means 3 things. 1, a strong display of strategic autonomy. Not everyone is happy about this trip. On Monday, 3 Western diplomats wrote an op-ed for an Indian newspaper. They blamed Putin for extending the war in Ukraine. And don't forget Donald Trump. He wants India to cut ties with Russia. He's also imposed 50% tariffs over our oil trade. Yet what does India do? It hosts Putin warmly with hugs, carpooling, and ceremony. This visit demonstrates India's strategic autonomy. That's the first point for India. Secondly, it opens doors to new frontiers like Central Asia and the Arctic. India is used to the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, but Russia will help Indian soldiers, or Indian sailors rather, adapt to the cold Arctic. It will expand India's footprint to new areas. And number three, India got a reminder of Russia's reliability. They condemned the Pahalgam attack in the joint statement. They promised uninterrupted oil supply, and they promised to reduce the trade surplus with India. These are all signs of a reliable partner. They do not weaponize trade or energy. They seek cooperation. So this is what it means for India. Now let's talk about Russia. What does this summit mean for Moscow? Number one, an outlet for the sanctions pressure. Russia is cut off from Western investments and technology. India could plug some of that gap. Number two, a counterbalance to China. Yes, Russia has a close partnership with Beijing, but there are areas of conflict, like Central Asia and the Arctic, which is why Russia is seeking India's help. Together, they can keep Chinese hegemony in check. And finally, number three, here's what it means for Russia, a way to amplify Russian capabilities. I'll explain how. Russia is an aging economy. They're seeking Indian labor to power their industries. So Russian tech plus Indian labor. Same with space and defense. Russia does not have the funds to undertake big missions like a sixth-generation fighter jet or a manned mission to space. And that's where Indian funds and labor come in. They can amplify Russia's power. So this is what it means for Moscow. Now let's look at the rivals. What does the summit mean for China and the US? We'll start with China. Again, 3 points. One, it shows that Russia has options. A lot has been said about Moscow's dependence on China, but today showed that that is not the case. Whether it's for trade or investment or labor, Russia has options beyond China. Number two, China has its work cut out in Eurasia. India and Russia are joining forces in the region. They're building new trade corridors like the International North-South Corridor and the Northern Sea Route. Both could challenge China's Belt and Road Initiative. You see, Beijing's goal is to monopolize this region. But together, Russia and India can stop that. Of course, it's not all bad news for Beijing. There's also a silver lining for China, and that's point number three. A strong India-Russia partnership can undermine the West. They can shun the US dollar, they can overhaul Western financial systems, and maybe even create alternatives. All of this ties into China's larger goal. They too want to undermine Western dominance. This is what the visit means for China. And then we come to the United States of America. What would Donald Trump have made of this meeting? Again, we have 3 points. Number one, it's a setback to his divide and conquer strategy. Trump wanted to drive a wedge in Eurasia, between India and Russia, between Russia and China, between India and China. But it's backfired spectacularly. His policies have deepened cooperation in this part of the world. Yes, differences still exist, but on certain issues, there is agreement. That's the first takeaway for the US. Secondly, it's a blow to the US dollar. Both Russia and India want to trade in local currencies, and they've made spectacular progress. More than 90% of Russia's trade with India happens in local currencies, meaning the rupee and the ruble. It's above 90% with China as well. At this rate, they could remove the dollar from the picture altogether, something that Donald Trump dreads. And finally, point number three for the US, possible setback to defense ambitions. The US wants to drag India into its security ambit, whether it's selling American weapons or sharing military tech or sharing military assets. They want to do it with India. But Russia is offering a lot more than weapons. They are offering to transfer technology. They're offering to produce in India with India. Basically, the deals are a lot sweeter. And this could upset calculations in Washington. I'm sure we will hear from Trump soon. He'll wake up, he'll see the pictures, and probably log into Truth Social. We'll tell you how that plays out. Putin touched down in India last night, but even before that, he'd captured India's attention, not in a speech, not in a statement, but as a tiny aircraft icon on a website, a dot on flight radar. This is Putin's official aircraft. It's the Ilyushin IL-96-300 PU. It is also called the Flying Kremlin. Yesterday, it took off from Moscow sometime in the afternoon. It started its journey towards New Delhi. And at one point, 20,000 people were tracking it. 20,000 people. It became the most tracked flight in the world yesterday. People were seeing it move. But were they tracking the real flight? The flight that Putin was on, were they tracking that, or were they following the wrong one? And here's why I ask. Because there were two identical Russian planes heading to India. At times, only one plane was visible. At times, both of them would show up on the radar. One switched on its transponder, the other switched it off. And this continued for 6.5 hours until one of these flights landed in New Delhi. That's when people figured which plane President Putin was on. And this is not new for world leaders, especially for a leader like Putin. He is one of the world's most protected leaders. He has one of the tightest security protocols. So using a decoy aircraft is not unusual at all. Russia does it all the time. Also, it's not just his plane that grabbed headlines. Putin landed in India at around 7 p.m. local time, 7 p.m. IST. The red carpet was rolled out. The Russian president walked down the stairs, and waiting for him was Indian Prime Minister Modi. Now, prime ministers usually do not receive world leaders at the airport, but Prime Minister Modi did, and it shows you how special the relationship is. From there, it was a ride to 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, that is the official residence of India's Prime Minister. But it wasn't just another ride, it was a very special carpool. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin were in the same car. Now, the first time they've done this, 2 months back, they were in China, in Tianjin for the SCO summit, and there too, they carpooled. Yesterday, we saw a repeat in Delhi, but it was a repeat with a twist. Because you would expect Modi's Range Rover or Mercedes Maybach or Putin's Aurus Senat, a long motorcade, black SUVs, tinted windows, standard fare for heads of state. But no, these two leaders climbed into a white Toyota Fortuner. And on cue, the internet exploded. Why did they choose this car? Lots of theories are doing the rounds, but here are the two prominent ones. One, the security and optics of it. Security agencies have a simple philosophy. Predictability is a weakness, neutrality is protection. A Toyota can blend into any convoy. It doesn't become a target. It's easy to armor. You can have 3 identical copies ready to switch at a moment's notice. And when the Russian Federal Protection Service arrived, they reportedly agreed with this idea. Also, it's about the origin of the car. Mercedes is a German company. Range Rover is owned by Tata, but manufactured in the UK. Toyota is a Japanese company. The car is manufactured by Japan. So not using a Western car or Western manufactured car could be one of the reasons for the optics. The other theory is that it's a practical choice. The Fortuner has 3 rows. The Range Rover does not. 2 heads of state need interpreters. Interpreters need seats. Diplomacy at the end of the day sometimes runs on very simple things. In this case, the seating capacity of a car. And this is something to think about. Because this was a visit filled with grand topics: oil, defense, Ukraine, sanctions, trade imbalance. And yet, what dominated social media and regular conversations was a Toyota SUV. Sometimes geopolitics is not defined by speeches or statements. Sometimes it's defined by tiny, almost mundane choices like a hug, a flight watched by 20,000 strangers, a white Fortuner rolling through New Delhi, because sometimes the smallest details make the loudest noise. In the last 24 hours, we've seen a lot of images of handshakes, smiles, statements, and 2 leaders sharing a car. But this story did not begin 24 hours ago. It began 25 years ago. That's how long Vladimir Putin has been in power. He first arrived in India 25 years ago, and since then he has visited multiple times under different governments in different eras and for very different reasons. So tonight we take you back to all his visits to India over the years. It's a trip down memory lane, frame by frame.
Some stories unfold across many visits, across many handshakes, across many years. For India, that familiar visitor has been Vladimir Putin. Over a quarter century, he has become a recurring face in India's guestbook. The album opens in December 2000. Putin's first visit as Russia's new president. He meets then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Both sides sign the Delhi Declaration on Strategic Partnership. Then, Putin goes to the Rajghat to pay his tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. He also greets the Indian Parliament with a namaste and visits the Taj Mahal with his wife. Then he flies to Mumbai for a stop at the Bhabha Atomic Research Centre. His visit to the centre becomes one of the defining moments of the trip. Turn the page to 2002. Putin returns for his second visit. Talks focus on defence, energy and regional security. The two countries review progress under the new strategic partnership. Fast forward to January 2007. Putin arrives in India as the chief guest for Republic Day. India rolls out the red carpets in full ceremonial style. He watches the parade beside then-President APJ Abdul Kalam. Putin also attended the traditional at-home reception hosted by the President at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. He meets then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Their discussions include defence cooperation, civil nuclear energy and economic ties, among others. Putin's next visit comes in 2012. He makes a short working visit to India on December 24th and meets then President Pranab Mukherjee and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh for the annual summit. He is also called on by the chairperson of the Congress Party, Sonia Gandhi, as well as then leader of opposition, Sushma Swaraj. The next trip comes in 2014. Putin visits India for the first time after Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes over. The visit was used to lock in a 10-year strategic roadmap. He also met Indian business leaders and addressed the World Diamond Conference that year. 2 years later, in 2016, Putin visited India to attend the BRICS summit in Goa. He also took part in the annual India-Russia summit afterwards. Fast forward to 2018, Putin lands in New Delhi for another annual summit. During this visit, he interacts with a group of talented Indian and Russian children. Putin also meets business leaders and calls on then-President Ramnath Kovind.
India-Russia warm and friendly bilateral relations are progressing well.
Next is December 2021. This was his last visit before the Ukraine war began. During this brief visit, both the countries launched the first India-Russia 2+2 dialogue. They also re-examined their bilateral ties. And this brings us to the present. Putin is in India on a state visit. And with this, another page is added to a long journey. It's a relationship that has been strengthened by each visit by Putin. It's a story told across 25 years. And now, we are turning the page to the next chapter.
It's a very dramatic throwback all the way back to the start of this century. You saw the young Vladimir Putin, tentative and still learning. Today, he is one of the longest-serving leaders in the world. 25 years non-stop, sometimes as president, sometimes as prime minister, but always in control. In this time, how has Putin shaped world politics? What have 25 years of Putinism yielded? You could divide it into four things. Number one, Putin brought Russia back from the dead. I know it sounds dramatic, but trust me, it is not an exaggeration. Look at the Russian economy's growth over the years. In 1990, it was minus 3%. 1995, minus 4.1%. 1998, minus 5.3%. Most people had written off Russia. Forget being a major power, it was expected to be a broken, irrelevant state. Then came Putin in 1999. In the year 2000, Russia grew by 10%. In 2005, it grew by 6.4%. In 2010, by 4.5%. Putin capitalized on Russia's energy resources. He dragged the Russian bear out of its slumber. Now it was time to announce it. And that is Putin's second imprint on this century, his military operations. After 1991, we enter a unipolar world. The United States could get away with any attack or invasion. But others were expected to be careful. But Putin refused to fall in line. In 2008, he invaded neighboring Georgia. In 2014, he invaded and occupied Ukraine's Crimea. In 2015, he joined the Syrian civil war. And in 2022, he attacked all of Ukraine. In Putin's mind, he was doing all of this to defend Russian interests. But globally, they've had consequences. Oil prices have risen, food prices have surged, shipping routes have been affected, supply chains have been cut. Basically, Putin's actions have created a churn in the world. We can debate the motive, but we can all agree that the impact is revealing. Next is the third imprint, Russia's pivot to Asia. If you look at history, Russia has always focused westward, and frankly, it made sense. Most of Russia's population lives in the West. Most of their trade happens to the West. Most of their enemies have come from the West, so the policy was geared westward. And this was true across regimes, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, and now the Russian Federation. But Putin changed that. He has tied Russia's fortunes to the East. Again, look at the numbers. In 2013, only 26% of Russia's trade happened in the Indo-Pacific. By 2021, that had gone up to almost 34%. Chances are it's even higher today. Because after the Ukraine war, oil trade has surged. Most of Russian oil now ends up in India and China. And it's not just trade. Putin has built closer ties to North Korea. He has brought Korean soldiers to fight in Ukraine. He is also sharing strategic technology with Pyongyang. All of this confirms an eastern pivot. For years, Russia was counted as a European power. Today, it's more calibrated to Asia. Which brings us to the final imprint of Putin's rule, the fourth one, undermining US hegemony. This is happening on all fronts. His military operations were an open challenge to the United States. They did nothing in Georgia, they did nothing in Crimea, and they're on the verge of giving up in Ukraine. This was unthinkable in the 1990s or even the early 2000s. Back then, the US was the global policeman. But now that power is waning. It's not just on the battlefield, it's also financial. Putin is leading a fight against the US dollar. He's pushing alternatives to the US currency. And that's the thing about his strategy. It's not an all-out attack. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Russia's plan is to chip away at American hegemony. Maybe that's why he likes Donald Trump, because Trump is doing that job for him. Either way, one thing is clear. Putin is not done yet. He started a Russian revival mission way back in the year 2000. More than 25 years later, he's still at it. And we don't know what drives him. The West says he's dreaming of the old Soviet days of Russian imperialism and grandeur. Some say that he just wants a multipolar world, a world where Russia has a seat at the high table, a world where no one lectures him. Yet others say that he's obsessed with power and control. The fact is, no one knows for sure. And that mystery is what adds to the cult of Putin. As far as trips go, this was a short one. Just 27 hours in New Delhi. Also, no Su-57 or S-500 purchase deals, which makes you wonder, what was this visit all about? Well, it was about a message. And frankly, India did not need 27 hours to send that message. It sent the message the moment Putin's plane touched down. Prime Minister Modi was on the tarmac. He personally welcomed Putin with a warm hug. Everything after that was just a bonus. And right here was a money shot. It showed India's defiance of Donald Trump's tariffs and threats. You can impose 25% levies, you can crank it up to 50%, you can impose secondary sanctions, but India will do what its national interest dictates. For Putin, there was similar defiance. Western commentary says that Russia is isolated. But look at Putin in New Delhi. He is being toasted by the world's largest democracy. If this is isolation, I hope everyone is isolated. Years later, we may not remember the agreements that were signed today, but we will remember this defiant messaging. Two proud countries refusing to bow down. December is a busy travel season in India, but it has kicked off with pure chaos. With more than 1,000 flights cancelled in one day, 1,000 flights. There were delays of more than 24 hours, thousands of people stranded at airports, many were left without food and water. There were even protests at some airports. And all of this traces back to one thing, a pilot crisis crippling the country's largest airline, Indigo.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Peter Elbers, the CEO of Indigo. I want to share with you that we have experienced severe operational disruptions for the past few days. Since then, the crisis continued to aggravate, with today, December 5th, being the most severely impacted day, with the number of cancellations well over 1,000, or more than half of our number of daily flights. I, on behalf of all of us at Indigo, would like to extend our sincerest apologies for the major inconvenience this has caused to many of our customers.
Things were so bad that the Indian government is being forced to intervene. They have launched an investigation into this. Now, we told you about all of it yesterday. Indigo is India's largest airline. They have a 60% market share. They operate 2,200 flights every day. This month, Indigo had implemented new flight time rules by the DGCA. That's the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. It's basically India's aviation watchdog. They came up with new rules. These rules increase rest time for pilots. The rules are meant to ensure safety. But for Indigo, that meant a pilot shortage. Its flights are known for being on time. But today, Indigo's on-time performance has plunged to 88.5%. That means nothing is taking off on time. The crisis was so bad at one point that a flight ticket from New Delhi to Mumbai ranged from 35,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees. Imagine that. And this is the busiest route in the country, Delhi-Mumbai. This ticket normally costs around 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. It went up by nearly 10 times, 50,000. All of this has made India's aviation watchdog intervene. That's the DGCA. They've now rolled back the new flight time rules. Basically, things can now go back to how they were. This is a temporary exemption, they say, and it's only to stabilize things for now. In fact, let me read from the statement of the DGCA. The central government is fully alert to air passenger woes and is in constant consultation with all stakeholders. Every possible measure, including the exemptions, as announced by DGCA on Friday, will be taken to restore schedules and ensure stability. But the DGCA is not letting Indigo get away with it. They have ordered a high-level investigation. The aviation watchdog will form a 4-member panel. They will investigate what went wrong. How did Indigo crumble so badly with these new rules?
Given the size, scale and complexity of our operation, it will take some time to return to a full normal situation, which we do anticipate between the 10th and the 15th of December.
Now, this crisis will not resolve itself in a day or two. If you have flights in the next few days, please keep checking the schedule. There will be more disruptions. The Indigo CEO himself said the disruptions will continue till the 15th of December. That said, not everybody is happy with the DGCA's move, especially the Pilots Association of India. They think that the aviation watchdog has caved. Let me read from their statement as well. This decision, taken despite repeated representations, formal letters and direct discussions with your esteemed office, has undermined the very spirit of the FDTL regulations and gravely compromised the safety of the flying public. So for pilots, the new norms are for safety. Diluting them means endangering safety. And it's not just the pilots who are angry. Social media users are questioning the watchdog's move as well. They say it impacts passenger safety. They're questioning the limits of pilots. They believe that Indigo is holding the entire system hostage and that the blackmail has worked. Which brings us to the big question tonight. Is India's aviation system prepared for such shocks? Or have we built a sector so fragile that it can crumble in minutes? Because think about it, Indigo controls 60% of India's skies. Air India holds another 25%. Together, that's 85% of the market share between two airlines. That means these two airlines control 4 out of every 5 seats in this country. It's a classic duopoly. So even if one of them fails, even if one chokes, the entire system collapses. And it has. SpiceJet has added extra flights to relieve the chaos, but that's not been enough. Nothing could match the sheer scale at which Indigo operates, and this raises many questions. These new rules were decided upon last year. Indigo had enough time to prepare for this. So why weren't they ready? And if they were not ready, what did the DGCA do about it? Why did the aviation watchdog not act faster? Why did the government not intervene earlier? This is the 5th day of the crisis. They're all active now, but why did they wait for it to escalate this far? We are the 5th largest aviation market in the world. What happens when India's aviation traffic doubles? What happens when we become the world's 3rd largest market? Are we prepared for that? Are our regulators prepared? Are our airlines prepared? Or are we just hoping that nothing breaks? Because this week something did break and the country got a glimpse of how vulnerable our skies really are. It's time we take accountability and fix this. Every economy has a moment when things look promising but also uncertain. India is in that moment. The economy is growing at its fastest pace in years. Inflation has fallen to levels no one expected, and yet the rupee is at its weakest point ever. We've told you about this on the show, and tonight we want to tell you about a new development which ties these trends together. The Reserve Bank of India, or RBI, has taken a major decision. This is India's central bank. It manages the country's money, it sets the rules for banks, and it decides how costly or cheap borrowing should be. Today, the Reserve Bank has made a call on that system. They have decided to cut the repo rate. The repo rate is the rate at which banks borrow from the RBI. Think of it like this. When a bank runs short of money, it borrows from the RBI. It takes a loan. It has to pay an interest on that loan, and that interest is called the repo rate. Today, that rate has been cut. It has been reduced by 25 basis points. Earlier, it was 5.5%. Now it is 5.25%. Now, it looks like a small drop on paper, but it has a big impact on households. We'll get to that in a bit, on how it impacts you. But first, why did the RBI cut the repo rate? Because India is in the middle of what the RBI governor calls a rare Goldilocks period. What does that mean? It means that the economy is not too hot and not too cold. It's just right, just like the Goldilocks story. India's economic growth is strong, prices are cooling, and that gives the RBI room to support the economy. Take a look at the numbers. GDP grew by 8.2% in the last quarter, in the last 3 months. It grew by 7.8% in the quarter before that. Income tax cuts have boosted demand. People can buy more because they have more money. GST rate cuts have made goods cheaper. GST is the goods and services tax. It was slashed in a big way recently. All these factors have helped sustain growth. The RBI now expects the GDP to grow by 7.3% this year. At the same time, inflation has fallen sharply. Inflation is the rate at which prices rise. When inflation is high, things are expensive, so your money buys less. When inflation is low, your money holds more value. And right now, India's inflation is at record lows. It was just 0.25% in October. The RBI's target is 4% inflation. It was 0.25. and they expect the full year inflation to be just 2%. Now, this combination of high growth and low inflation is rare. And that is why the RBI has room to cut rates. Listen to what the governor had to say.
Despite an unfavorable and challenging external environment, the Indian economy has shown remarkable resilience. It is poised to register high growth. The headroom provided by the inflation outlook has allowed us to remain growth supportive. We will continue to meet the productive requirements of the economy in a proactive manner while ensuring macroeconomic stability.
But here's the other side of the story. The rupee has been under pressure. We've been telling you about that too. This week, the Indian rupee crossed the $90 mark. So $1 costs more than 90 Indian rupees. That's a record low. How does the RBI view this? The governor said they won't target any specific level for the rupee. The market decides the value of the rupee. They did try to support it earlier, but now they won't. The RBI, he says, only acts when there is abnormal volatility. In other words, they won't intervene when it comes to the rupee.
Our stated policy always has been that we allow the markets to determine. We don't target price levels or any bands. We allow the markets to determine the prices. We believe that the markets, in the long run especially, are very efficient.
He pointed to India's strong fundamentals. India has forex reserves of $686 billion. Forex reserves are a country's emergency savings. They help you pay for imports. They help India stay stable during global shocks. Long story short, the RBI says that the Indian economy looks robust, so they've made loans cheaper for the banks. What does this mean for you? What does this rate cut mean for you, the consumer? Your loans become cheaper because banks are paying lower interest rate to the RBI, so they charge you less for your loan. This can support housing demand. Car loans and personal loans may become more affordable. But again, here's the other side. You may get lower returns on your savings. Fixed deposit rates may fall. But if you look at the overall picture, the RBI is supporting growth. It is watching the rupee. It is preparing for global uncertainty. Like I said, a delicate moment for the economy and a measured move from India's central bank. For our next story, let's start with a question. What happens to a country that wants growth but not the people who power that growth? The country ends up being a net loser. And I'm not the one saying this. These are the words of India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. He was recently speaking at a conclave. Someone asked him about immigration and the recent crackdowns, and this is what he had to say.
Mobility, the use of talent across boundaries, is to our mutual benefit. That they would be net losers if they actually erect too many roadblocks to the flow of talent. And particularly if you move into an era of advanced manufacturing, if this will be, you will need more talent, not less talent. Yeah. And talent cannot be organically developed at a high rate.
They're losing out. That's what the minister has said. He said countries are trying to protect so-called local jobs. They're cracking down on immigration. But for growth, you need talent. For deep tech and AI, you need talent, and talent moves. If you block that movement, the work won't stop. It will just go somewhere else. In other words, you can shut the door, but then companies will simply move their work or their operations to where the talent is. And the timing of these comments is significant because they come against the backdrop of a new immigration crackdown. A crackdown by the United States on visas, including H-1B visas. The Trump administration has ordered stricter vetting of applications. This is what it means. If you're applying for an H-1B visa, Washington will review your resume. It will go through your social media posts, including your LinkedIn profile. This is to check if you've been involved in censorship of any kind. And this is particularly significant for Indians because they get the highest number of such visas. Of all the approved H-1B applications, 71% are of Indians. That makes it a pipeline of Indian engineers, scientists and coders. The people who built Silicon Valley and kept American tech running, they came from India. But Minister Jaishankar makes an even sharper point. He says the West does not have a jobs problem because of immigrants. The West has a jobs problem because it let manufacturing go to China. And this is very important. He's saying immigrants did not take jobs. American factories moving overseas did. And this is the part that no politician wants to say out loud. Also, the West may not like it, but they cannot do without immigrants. And I'll give you 4 reasons why. Number 1, immigrants grow the economy. Look at this IMF report. It says a 1% rise in immigration boosts output by nearly 1% within 5 years. In the US, immigration is projected to raise the GDP by almost $9 trillion in the next decade. Reason number 2, innovation. Did you know that immigrants are responsible for more than 25% of US patents? Or that high-skilled immigrants are 80% more likely to start companies, or that a lot of major American tech CEOs from Google to Microsoft were immigrants, men and women who helped America innovate and grow. Reason 3, immigrants fill the gaps that nobody else wants to fill, like healthcare aides, agricultural labor, construction crews. Many Western economies would literally collapse without this workforce. Low-skilled immigrants also improve public finances. And reason 4, younger immigrants save aging countries. Europe and the US have aging populations. Immigrants balance that out. They work, they pay taxes, they support the pension systems. Without immigration, these systems start to crack. So they need immigrants. But if immigrants are so valuable, then why are these countries restricting them? Jaishankar offers an uncomfortably honest explanation. Politics. It's just politics. Leaders want to show that they are protecting their people, even when the real cause of job loss is automation and decades of outsourcing to China. It's easier to blame an engineer from Hyderabad than a corporation that moved its factory to Guangzhou.
You know, often the people in the forefront of entrepreneurship and technology would actually make the case for mobility. It is the people who I would say have a certain political base or a constituency to address who may oppose it. And they will probably reach some modus vivendi there.
And even Donald Trump knows this, because as he's cracking down on immigration, he's also saying that the US needs foreign talent. It's also important to underline here that we are talking about legal immigration. Legal mobility is good. Illegal mobility can be dangerous. Jaishankar warns about trafficking, exploitation, and political elements hijacking illegal migration routes. His message is not open borders. His message is smart borders. And where does that leave us? Well, we live in a world that wants growth, but is scared of the very people who can deliver that growth. Minister Jaishankar's message is simple: talent will move, tech will move, and if countries don't welcome the future will pass them by. The West can build walls, but walls don't build economies. Our next story takes us to the Eastern Pacific. The US has struck a suspected drug boat. 4 people on board are dead. Washington says the boat was run by a designated terrorist group, and it says the vessel was carrying illicit narcotics. This strike is part of a much larger US campaign at sea. It's a campaign that has targeted several boats in recent months and left more than 80 people dead, 80. But the timing of this new strike is delicate. Washington is divided over an earlier attack where a boat was hit twice. Some lawmakers have questioned the strike, others are defending this attack. All of it is happening as US naval forces continue to build up in the Caribbean. Here's a report.
A new US strike has taken place in the Eastern Pacific. Another suspected drug boat has been hit, and 4 people on board are now dead. The Pentagon confirmed the attack on Thursday. US Southern Command released a short video of the strike. It showed a small vessel moving across open water before a blast engulfed it. The Southern Command said the operation was authorized by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. It said the vessel was operated by a designated terrorist organization, and their intelligence confirmed that the boat carried illicit narcotics. It also claimed that the vessel was traveling along a known narco-trafficking route in the Eastern Pacific. This strike is part of a wider U.S. campaign in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. It is reportedly called Operation Southern Spear. Over recent months, the U.S. has targeted several suspected drug boats as part of the operations. More than 80 people have been killed in these attacks, but this new strike comes at a sensitive moment. Washington is still debating a September attack that has now triggered bipartisan scrutiny. In this case, a suspected drug boat was struck once. Then it was struck again. Lawmakers were shown classified footage this week. They saw the follow-up strike, and they left the briefing with very different views. Some called the footage one of the most troubling things they had seen in office. They said the survivors appeared unarmed and in distress. They noted that targeting shipwrecks is prohibited under the U.S. military's own manual. Legal experts have said the second strike could amount to a war crime. But others have defended the operation. They said the second strike was justified and claimed that the survivors were trying to escape from the capsized boat, and they argued that the crew still posed a threat. The White House says Hegseth did not order the second strike. Even President Donald Trump has said he was not aware of the second strike. Officials say the decision was made by an admiral who oversaw the operation.
I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back.
But now, families of victims are also coming forward. Relatives of a Colombian fisherman have filed a complaint. They say he was wrongly killed in another U.S. strike in September. All of this is now shaping a larger debate in Washington. Because President Trump says the United States is fighting what he calls narco-terrorists. He has deployed major naval assets to the Caribbean, and he has repeatedly said land strikes inside Venezuela could begin soon. Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, has accused the United States of using anti-drug operations as a pretext to overthrow his government. Both sides signal they are prepared for the next phase. The question now is not over these individual strikes, but what happens if this campaign moves from the sea to the land.
The internet loves good wordplay. Swap some letters around, change the order a bit, and you have a perfect internet joke. So imagine their joy when the Indigo crisis happened. An airline called Indigo that refuses to go. It was bumper season for wordplay memers. You had Indy don't go, you had Indy won't go, and Indy no go. Just goes on to show that nothing is ever serious on the internet. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Syria, thousands celebrate ahead of the anniversary of Bashar al-Assad's ouster. In China, French President Emmanuel Macron plays a game of table tennis, and the last supermoon of the year lights up skies worldwide. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1952, heavy smog swept over the city of London. In some places, visibility was reduced to less than 5 meters. By the time the smog lifted, at least 4,000 people had died. Experts blamed the smoke and soot from London's factories for the disaster. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
I rose from the army with medals on my chest. I spoke of freedom from colonial chains, but I tightened my own. I filled prisons with ghosts. Nearly 500,000 people were butchered under my rule, and I trusted only my paranoia. I gave myself grand titles. I claimed to be Africa's strongman. History calls me something else, the dictator. Who am I?